All right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. The pre-roll ads have run, and we are ready to get started. So, settle in, get comfortable, pull up a chair, grab a drink, and get your books ready, because we've got a little bit more stories to get through tonight. Welcome back. This is our second night of reading A Yankee in King Arthur's Court, or Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, depending on where you're sourcing your copy from. You're in the north, drop the Connecticut. You're in the south, or I guess it's the other way around. If you're in the south, you can drop the Connecticut. And they're all about just Yankees in general. In the north, you have to differentiate a little bit. If you're outside the state, then Lord help you. Just whatever you find. Because I have no idea how the publishers went about it for the international editions. So, last time, we got started and started to see a different sort of view of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round. And Merlin. Oh, Merlin. So, things were, well, the original impression we had from when we were reading Le Morte d'Arthur was sometimes charitable, sometimes over the top, and always very much a medieval soap opera. This is a rather less rosy outlook. They did the whole thing in the international. That's a mouthful. That's quite a mouthful. So we'll mix and match the two titles, however the case may be. Just by virtue of I've got the YouTube title and Twitch title as the full title, and I copy and paste when I set up my new streams. So such it is. Laziness endures. Alright, so, you may recall last time, our intrepid Yankee called forth an eclipse through his very convenient knowledge of when the next local eclipse in the neighborhood of Great Britain was going to be. Very handy, that. And also very convenient that while he thought that he was a day ahead of schedule, because the page boy was apparently unable to keep track of days, it all just sort of worked out. And to follow things up with that, Merlin, who was certainly on his case, having a rival wizard in the neighborhood after all, well, a little bit of home-brewed niter and other very fun chemistry experiments, and a little bit of a thunderstorm with a lightning rod later, and Merlin found himself homeless. But, out of the goodness of his heart, our Yankee thought let's put something back together and let him keep on, just so long as he knows his place and stops kicking up a fuss, right? He kind of got a feel for Merlin here. He might be a little insufferable, but I'm not sure he deserved all that. But our Yankee now is well established. And now it's likely that he's going to start implementing some changes now that he's the right hand of the king. Firmly supplanted the role of advisorship from Merlin and is on his way to implement some reforms. Bring Camelot into the whatever next century is. I think they're started in the 6th century, and bring them forward. 7th, 8th, 9th, all the way up to wherever he's comfortable. Or Yankee's probably aiming for something around the 19th century or so. See, he has his usual creature comforts. But we'll see what sort of resistances and problems arise. So, let's resume now, get back into our reading nook, and revisit our friend Mark Twain. And Sam is starting on the desk today. We'll see how long he hangs out. Alright, so tonight we are resuming from Chapter 8, The Boss. To be vested with enormous authority is a fine thing, but to have the onlooking world consent to it is a finer. The Tower episode solidified my power and made it impregnable. If any were perchance disposed to be jealous and critical before that, they experienced a change of heart now. There was not any one in the kingdom who would have considered it good judgment to meddle with my matters. I was fast getting adjusted to my situation and circumstances. For a time, I used to wake up mornings and smile at my dream and listen for the Colt's factory whistle. But that sort of thing played itself out, gradually, and at last I was fully able to realize that I was actually living in the 6th century. Oh, thanks for giving us the timestamp. And in King Arthur's court, not in a lunatic asylum. After that, I was just as much at home in that century as I could have been in any other. And as for preference, I wouldn't have traded it for the 20th. Look at the opportunities here for a man of knowledge, brains, pluck, and enterprise to sail in and grow up with the country. The grandest field that ever was, and all my own. Not a competitor, not a man who wasn't a baby to me in acquirements and capacities. Whereas, what would I amount to in the 20th century? I should be foreman of a factory, that's about all, and could drag a scene down any street any day and catch 100 better men than myself. What a jump I had made. I couldn't keep from thinking about it and contemplating it, just as one does who has struck oil. There was nothing back of me that could approach it, unless it might be Joseph's case. And Joseph's only approached it, it didn't equal it. Quite. For it stands to reason that, as Joseph's splendid financial ingenuities advantaged nobody but the king, the general public must have regarded him with a good deal of disfavor, whereas I had done my entire public a kindness in sparing the sun, and was popular by reason of it. I was no shadow of a king. I was the substance. The king himself was the shadow. My power was colossal. It was not a mere name, as such things have generally been. It was the genuine article. I stood here at the very spring and source of the second great period of the world's history, and could see the trickling stream of that history gather and deepen and broaden and roll its mighty tides down the far centuries. And I could note the upspringing of adventurers like myself in the shelter of its long array of thrones. De Montforts, Gavestons, Mortimers, Villieses, the war-making campaign-directing wantons of France, the Charles II scepter-wielding drabs, but nowhere in the procession was my full-sized fellow visible. I was a unique, and glad to know that that fact could not be dislodged or challenged for 13 centuries and a half. Sure. Yes. In power, I was equal to the king. At the same time, there was another power that was a trifle stronger than both of us put together. That was the church. I do not wish to disguise that fact. I couldn't, if I wanted to. But never mind about that now. It will show up in its proper place later on. It didn't cause me any trouble in the beginning, at least of any consequence. Well, it was a curious country, and full of interest, and the people, they were the quaintest and simplest, trustingest race. Why, they were nothing but rabbits. It was pitiful for a person born in a wholesome, free atmosphere to listen to their humble and hearty outpourings of loyalty toward their king and church and nobility, as if they had any more occasion to love and honor king and church and noble than a slave has to love and honor the lash, or a dog has to love and honor the stranger that kicks him. Why, dear me, any kind of royalty, howsoever modified, any kind of aristocracy, howsoever pruned, is rightly an insult. But if you are born and brought up under that sort of arrangement, you probably never find it out for yourself, and don't believe it when somebody else tells you. It is nobody to make a body ashamed of his race, to think of the sort of froth that has always occupied its thrones without shadow of right or reason, and the seventh-rate people that have always figured it as its aristocracies, a couple of monarchs and nobles who, as a rule, would have achieved only poverty and obscurity if left, like their betters, to their own exertions. The most of King Arthur's British nation were slaves, pure and simple, and bore that name, and wore the iron collar on their necks. And the rest were slaves in fact, but without the name. They imagined themselves men and freemen, and called themselves so. The truth was, the nation as a body was in the world for one object, and one only: to grovel before king and church and noble, to slave for them, sweat blood for them, starve that they might be fed, work that they might play, drink misery to the dregs that they might be happy, go naked that they might wear silks and jewels, pay taxes that they might be spared from paying them, be familiar all their lives with the degrading language and postures of adulation that they might walk in pride and think themselves the gods of this world. For all this, the thanks they got were cuffs and contempt, and so poor-spirited were they that they took even this sort of attention as an honor. All right, go off, Mark. Through proxy of the engineer, I suppose, but go off, Mark. Inherited ideas are a curious thing, and interesting to observe and examine. I had mine. The king and his people had theirs. In both cases, they flowed in ruts worn deep by time and habit. And the man who should have proposed to divert them by reason and argument would have had a long contract on his hands. For instance, those people had inherited the idea that all men without title and a long pedigree, whether they had great natural gifts and acquirements or hadn't, were creatures of no more consideration than so many animals, bugs, insects. Whereas I had inherited the idea that human daws who can consent to masquerade in the peacock shams of inherited dignities and unearned titles are of no good but to be laughed at. The way I was looked upon was odd, but it was natural. You know how the keeper and the public regard the elephant in the menagerie? Well, that is the idea. They are full of admiration of his vast bulk and his prodigious strength. They speak with pride of the fact that he can do 100 marvels which are far and away beyond their own powers. And they speak with the same pride of the fact that, in his wrath, he is able to drive 1,000 men before him. But does that make him one of them? No. The raggedest tramp in the pit would smile at the idea. He couldn't comprehend it, couldn't take it in, couldn't in any remote way conceive of it. Well, to the king, the nobles, and all the nation, down to the very slaves and tramps, I was just that kind of an elephant, and nothing more. I was admired, also feared, but it was as an animal is admired and feared. The animal is not reverenced. Neither was I. I was not even respected. I had no pedigree, no inherited title, so in the king's and nobles' eyes, I was mere dirt. The people regarded me with wonder and awe, but there was no reverence mixed with it. Through the force of inherited ideas, they were not able to conceive of anything being entitled to that except pedigree and lordship. There you see the hand of that awful power, the Roman Catholic Church. In 2 or 3 little centuries, it had converted a nation of men to a nation of worms. Before the day of the church supremacy in the world, men were men and held their heads up, and had a man's pride and spirit and independence. And what of greatness and position a person got, he got mainly by achievement, not by birth. But then the church came to the front with an axe to grind, and she was wise, subtle, and knew more than one way to skin a cat, or a nation. She invented divine right of kings, and propped it all around brick by brick with beatitudes, wrenching them from their good purpose to make them fortify an evil one. She preached to the commoner humility, obedience to superiors, the beauty of self-sacrifice. She preached to the commoner meekness under insult, preached still to the commoner, always to the commoner, patience, meanness of spirit, non-resistance under oppression, and she introduced heritable ranks and aristocracies, and taught all the Christian populations of the earth to bow down to them and worship them. Even down to my birth century, that poison was still in the blood of Christendom. And the best of English commoners was still content to see his inferiors impudently continuing to hold a number of positions, such as lordships and the throne, to which the grotesque laws of his country did not allow him to aspire. In fact, he was not merely contented with this strange condition of things. He was even able to persuade himself that he was proud of it. It seems to show that there isn't anything you can't stand, if you are only born and bred to it. Of course, that taint, that reverence for rank and title, has been in our American blood too. I know that. But when I left America, it had disappeared, at least to all intents and purposes. The remnant of it was restricted to the dudes and dudesses. When a disease has worked its way down to that level, it may fairly be said to be out of the system. But to return to my anomalous position in King Arthur's kingdom, here I was, a giant among pygmies, a man among children, a master intelligence among intellectual moles. By all rational measurement, the one and only actually great man in that whole British world. And yet, there and then, just as in the remote England of my birth time, the sheep-witted earl, who could claim long descent from a king's leman, acquired at second hand from the slums of London, was a better man than I was. Such a personage was fawned upon in Arthur's realm, and reverently looked up to by everybody, even though his dispositions were as mean as his intelligence, and his morals as base as his lineage. There were times when he could sit down in the king's presence, but I couldn't. I could have got a title easily enough. That would have raised me a large step in everybody's eyes, even in the king's, the giver of it. But I didn't ask for it, and I declined it when it was offered. I couldn't have enjoyed such a thing with my notions. And it wouldn't have been fair, anyway, because as far back as I could go, our tribe had always been short of the bar sinister. I couldn't have felt really and satisfactorily fine and proud and set up over any title except one that should come from the nation itself, the only legitimate source. And such an one I hope to win, and in the course of years of honest and honorable endeavor, I did win it, and did wear it with a high and clean pride. This title fell casually from the lips of a blacksmith one day in a village, was caught up as a happy thought and tossed from mouth to mouth with a laugh and an affirmative vote. In 10 days it had swept the kingdom, and was become as familiar as the king's name. I was never known by any other designation afterward. Whether in the nation's talk or in grave debate upon matters of state and the council board of the sovereign, this title, translated into modern speech, would be the boss, elected by the nation. That suited me. and it was a pretty high title. There were very few these, and I was one of them. You spoke of the Duke, or the Earl, or the Bishop. How could anyone tell which one you meant? But if you spoke of the King, or the Queen, or the Boss, it was different. Well, I liked the King, and as King, I respected him. I respected the office. At least respected it as much as I was capable of respecting any unearned supremacy. But as men, I looked down upon him and his nobles privately, and he and they liked me, and respected my office. But as an animal, without birth or sham title, they looked down upon me, and were not particularly private about it either. I didn't charge for my opinion about them, and they didn't charge for their opinion about me. The account was square, the books balanced, everybody was satisfied. Alright, that brings us to the end of chapter 8. So, that was certainly a way to get us started back with this book. The boss, and as serving as mouthpiece to Mark Twain, they got some ideas. And it's interesting to see it through the lens of looking back. The views on the church are very much like post-Enlightenment, almost Marxist views of the church. The views of the aristocracy are very much rooted in, like, an American sentiment, where you don't respect the landed titles, or the lineage and blood of nobles. But it's rather overlooking the reality of generational power that we still have here, that is of a different nature, perhaps, but really at the root it's the same. So, I'd like to say he's ahead of his time, but not quite all the way there. He certainly makes compelling arguments, and it's a fun little diatribe, though. Exactly. We reinvented divine right of kings, but with money. You just have to buy a little bit of an indulgence, and guess what? You've got the will of heaven on your side. All it takes is a measly couple $1 million. Or in the case of a senator, a couple tens of $1,000s, and you've got one in your pocket. Senators are surprisingly cheap. All right, so let's see how this will continue, because we've seen that he's been branded as the boss, but we haven't really seen why that came about yet. I imagine that will develop. The whole setting here as the sole man of enlightenment is, to be fair, it's certainly more than a little pompous, but it does come across as a fair bit of sort of power fantasy, where character, author, whoever may be, reader, is taken back and put in a position where they've got unlimited power. Whether they can flex that might or not in certain ways and really stand above the crowd is entirely up to the situation and to their own gumption. So, let's see how that comes across and plays out. It does feel very familiar, if you've been following any sort of, I don't know, anime, light novels, manga, you name it, in the last 20 years. It's a very familiar storyline. Alright. Chapter 9. The Tournament. They were always having grand tournaments there at Camelot, and very stirring and picturesque and ridiculous human bullfights they were, too, but just a little wearisome to the practical mind. However, I was generally on hand, for two reasons. A man must not hold himself aloof from the things which his friends and his community have at heart, if he would be liked, especially as a statesman. And both as businessman and statesman, I wanted to study the tournament and see if I couldn't invent an improvement on it. That reminds me to remark in passing that the very first official thing I did in my administration, and it was on the very first day of it too, was to start a patent office. For I knew that a country without a patent office and good patent laws was just a crab and couldn't travel any way but sideways or backways. That's an interesting way to put a stagnant conservative society. A crab. I kind of like that. Right. Things ran along. A tournament nearly every week, and now and then the boys used to want me to take a hand. I mean, Sir Lancelot and the rest. Oh yes, Sir Lancelot and the rest are the boys. Very nice, very nice. He's adopted the Knights of the Table Round as the neighborhood jocks. So, instead of a beer league with the boys at the round table. But I said I would by and by. No hurry yet. And too much government machinery to oil up and set to rights and start a-going. We had one tournament which was continued from day to day during more than a week, and as many as 500 knights took part in it, from first to last. They were weeks gathering. They came on horseback from everywhere, from the very ends of the country, and even from beyond the sea, and many brought ladies, and all brought squires and troops of servants. It was a most gaudy and gorgeous crowd, as to costumer, and very characteristic of the country and the time, in the way of high animal spirits, innocent indecencies of language, and happy-hearted indifference to morals. It was fight or look on, all day and every day, and sing, gamble, dance, carouse half the night every night. They had a most noble good time. You never saw such people. Those banks of beautiful ladies shining in their barbaric splendors. Would see a knight sprawl from his horse in the lists with the lance shaft the thickness of your ankle clean through him and the blood spouting, and instead of fainting they would clap their hands and crowd each other for a better view. Only sometimes one would dive into her handkerchief and look ostentatiously broken-hearted, and then you could lay 2 to 1 that there was a scandal there somewhere, and she was afraid the public hadn't found it out. The noise at night would have been annoying to me, ordinarily, but I didn't mind it in the present circumstances, because it kept me from hearing the quacks detaching legs and arms from the day's cripples. They ruined an uncommon good old cross-cut saw for me, and broke the sawbuck too, but I let it pass. And as for my axe, I made up my mind that the next time I lent an axe to a surgeon, I would pick my century. I not only watched this tournament from day to day, but detailed an intelligent priest from my Department of Public Morals and Agriculture and ordered him to report it. For it was my purpose, by and by, when I should have gotten the people along far enough, to start a newspaper. The first thing you want in a new country is a patent office. Then work up your school system, and after that, out with your paper. A newspaper has its faults, and plenty of them, but no matter. It's hark from the tomb for a dead nation, and don't you forget it. You can't resurrect a dead nation without it. There isn't any way. So I wanted to sample things, and be finding out what sort of reporter material I might be able to rake together out of the 6th century when I should come to need it. Well, the priest did very well, considering. He got in all the details, and that is a good thing, in a local item. You see, he had kept books for the undertaker, department of his church, when he was younger. And there, you know, the money's in the details. The more details, the more swag, bearers, mutes, candles, prayers, everything counts. And if the bereaved don't buy prayers enough, you mark up your candles with a forked pencil, and your bill shows up all right. And he had a good knack at getting in the complimentary thing here and there, about knight that was likely to advertise. No, I mean, a knight that had influence. And he also had a neat gift of exaggeration. For in his time, he had kept door for a pious hermit who lived in a sty and worked miracles. Yeah, I don't know about so a well thought out and reasonable patent system is beneficial. It helps to protect the rights of inventors and promote innovation, and also helps to disseminate the ideas with appropriate kickbacks to the inventors. The convoluted mess of modern patents, yeah, the implementation doesn't live up to the ideal. To not have patents at all, no intellectual properties whatsoever, is a recipe for disaster. It's going to stifle innovation right from the onset. But you can't go too far. And yeah, we've seen all sorts of each way. Yep, exactly. The problem being, lawyers sniffed out that they can make quite a lot of money dealing with patents because they're very convoluted. And the more money there is in something, the more incentive there is to make a muck of it. See insurance. Yeah. So, some solid regulation from people who actually understand the material being regulated, without a vested interest in the material being regulated, is pretty much the answer. But with enough inertia behind something, no real change is ever going to happen. And now I'm depressed. And drinking Diet Coke instead of anything to really take the edge off. So, there's that. Thanks, Mark. That's exactly what I needed on a Tuesday evening. Where were we? And he had a good knack at getting in the complimentary thing here and there about a knight that was likely to advertise. I mean a knight that had influence. And he also had a neat gift of exaggeration. For in his time, he had kept door for a pious hermit who lived in a sty and worked miracles. Of course, this novice's report lacked whoop and crash and lurid description, and therefore wanted the true ring. But its antique wording was quaint and sweet and simple, and full of the fragrances and flavors of the time, and these little merits made up in a measure for its more important lacks. Here is an extract from it. Then Sir Brian de l'Isle and Gramont Grummersome, knights of the castle, encountered with Sir Aglovale and Sir Tor smote down Sir Gramont Grummersome to the earth. Then came Sir Carados of the Dolorous Tower, and Sir Turquine, knights of the castle, and there encountered with them Sir Percival de Gallis and Sir Lamorac de Gallis, that were two brethren. And there encountered Sir Percival with Sir Carados, and either brake their spears unto their heads. And then Sir Turquine with Sir Lamorac, and either of them smote down each other, horse and all, to the earth. And either parties rescued other, and horsed them again. And Sir Arnold and Sir Gauta, knights of the castle, encountered with Sir Brandil and Sir Kay. And these four knights encountered mightily, and brake their spears to their hands. Then came Sir Pertolope from the castle, and there Pertolope, probably Pertolope. And there encountered with him Sir Lionel, and there Sir Pertolope the Green Knight smote down Sir Lionel, brother to Sir Launcelot. All this was marked by noble heralds, who bear him best and their names. Then Sir Bleoberis brake his spear upon Sir Gareth, but of that stroke Sir Bleoberis fell to the earth. When Sir Galihodin saw that, he bade Sir Gareth keep him, and Sir Gareth smote him to the earth. Then Sir Galahad gat a spear to avenge his brother, and in the same wise Sir Gareth served him, and Sir Dinadan and his brother Le Cote Maltail, and Sir Sagraman le Desiro, and Sir Dorinus le Savage, all these he bare down with one spear. When King Aswisance of Ireland saw Sir Gareth fare so, he marvelled what he might be, that one time seemed green, and another time at his again coming he seemed blue, and thus at every course that he rode to and fro he changed his colour, so that there might neither king nor knight have ready cognizance of him. Then Sir Anguisance, the King of Ireland, encountered with Sir Gareth, and there Sir Gareth smote him from his horse, saddle and all, and then came King Carados of Scotland, and Sir Gareth smote him down, horse and man. And in the same wise he served King Uriens of the land of Gore. And then there came in Sir Bagdemagus, and Sir Gareth smote him down, horse and man to the earth. And Bagdemagus' son, Meliganus, brake a spear upon Sir Gareth mightily and knightly. And then Sir Galahalt, the noble prince, cried on high, Knight with the many colours, well hast thou jousted. Now make thee ready, that I may just with thee. Sir Gareth heard him, and he gat a great spear, and so they encountered together. And there the prince brake his spear, but Sir Gareth smote him upon the left side of the helm, that he reeled here and there, and he had fallen down, had not his men recovered him. Truly, said King Arthur, that knight with the many colours is a good knight. Wherefore the king called upon him Sir Launcelot, and prayed him to encounter with that knight. Sir, said Sir Launcelot, I may as well find in my heart for to forbear him at this time, for he hath had travail enough this day, and when a good knight doth so well upon some day, it is no good knight's part to let him of his worship. And, namely, when he seeth a knight hath done so great labour, for, peradventure, said Sir Launcelot, his quarrel is here this day, and peradventure he is best beloved with his lady of all that be here. For I see well he paineth himself, and enforceth him to do great deeds. And therefore, said Sir Launcelot, as for me, this day he shall have the honour, though it lay in my power to put him from it. I would not. Okay, so I thought we were reading Twain. No. We are just going back to Lord Arthur for this segment. There was an unpleasant little episode that day, which, for reasons of state, I struck out of my priest's report. You will have noticed that Gary was doing some great fighting in the engagement. Gary. Yeah, at least it's a little bit that's just encapsulated. And he's sort of self-aware that it's dry. Alright. You will have noticed that Gary was doing some great fighting in the engagement. When I say Gary, I mean Sir Gareth. Gary was my private pet name for him. It suggests that I had a deep affection for him, and that was the case. But it was a private pet name only, and never spoken aloud to anyone, much less to him. Being a noble, he would not have endured a familiarity like that from me. Well, to proceed, I sat in the private box set apart for me as the king's minister, while Sir Dinadan was waiting for his turn to enter the lists. He came in there and sat down and began to talk, for he was always making up to me, because I was a stranger, and he liked to have a fresh market for his jokes. The most of them having reached that stage of where the teller has to do the laughing himself, while the other person looks sick. I had always responded to his efforts as well as I could, and felt a very deep and real kindness for him, for the reason that, if by malice of fate he knew that one particular anecdote which I had heard oftenest and had most hated and most loathed all my life, he had at least spared it me. It was one which I had heard attributed to every humorous person who had ever stood on American soil, from Columbus down to Artemus Ward. It was about a humorous lecturer who flooded an ignorant audience with the killingest jokes for an hour and never got a laugh. And then when he was leaving, some gray simpletons wrung him gratefully by the hand and said it had been the funniest thing that they had ever heard. And it was all they could do to keep from laughing right out the meeting. That anecdote never saw the day that it was worth the telling. And yet, I had sat under the telling of it hundreds and thousands and millions and billions of times, and cried and cursed all the way through. Then, who can hope to know what my feelings were to hear this armor-plated ass start in on it again, in the murky twilight of tradition, before the dawn of history, while even the Lactantius might be referred to as the late Lactantius. And the Crusades wouldn't be born for 500 years yet. Just as he finished, the callboy came, so haw-hawing like a demon, he went rattling and clanking out like a crate of loose castings. And I knew nothing more. It was some minutes before I came to, and then I opened my eyes just in time to see Sir Gareth fetch him an awful welt, and I unconsciously out with the prayer, I hope to gracious he killed. But by ill luck, before I had got half through with the words, Sir Gareth crashed into Sir Sagramore le Desirous and sent him thundering over his horse's crupper. And Sir Sagramore caught my remark and thought I meant it for him. Well, whenever one of those people got a thing into his head, there was no getting it out again. I knew that, so I saved my breath and offered no explanations. As soon as Sir Sagramore got well, he notified me that there was a little account to settle between us, and he named a day 3 or 4 years in the future, place of settlement, the lists where the offence had been given. I said I would be ready when he got back. You see, he was going for the Holy Grail. The boys all took a flyer at the Holy Grail now and then. It was a several years' cruise. They always put in the long absence, snooping around, in the most conscientious way, though none of them had any idea where the Holy Grail really was. And I don't think any of them actually expected to find it, or would have known what to do with it if he had run across it. You see, it was just the Northwest Passage of that day, as you may say. That was all. Every year, expeditions went out Holy Grailing, and next year, relief expeditions went out to hunt for them. There was worlds of reputation in it, but no money. Why, they actually wanted me to put in. Well, I should smile. All right. So that brings us to the end of chapter 9. And, okay, yeah, I'm not dropping any frames. I just saw some buffering there, but I think it's on my downstream end, not on the upstream. All right, so we've seen what our Yankee has to think of the pageantry and the going through the motions of the chivalric duties that are there, the jousting, the games, the lists, and the questing. He does realize that, yeah, you need to put in some appearance. If you're going to make yourself available and friendly to the populace and the people, you need to take part in their games, right? So, maybe not a player, but a spectator, at least. See it now with politicians showing up at sports games. You can't just write it off as sports ball and be done with it, because people care about these things. It's every bit as much football's every bit as much a religion as Christianity, honestly. So, just don't make light of it if you're trying to make yourself popular. All right, let's try and get through another chapter here before we come to Yes, city name sports team. We're number one. All right, let's see if we can get through one more chapter before we come up on our break. Chapter 10. Beginnings of Civilization. Ah, here we go. He's going to start pushing things along. The Round Table soon heard of the challenge, and of course, it was a good deal discussed, for such things interested the boys. I still love that he calls the Knights of the Round Table the boys. The king thought I ought now to set forth in quest of adventures, so that I might gain renown and be the more worthy to meet Sir Sagramore when the several years should have rolled away. I excused myself for the present. I said it would take me 3 or 4 years yet to get things well fixed up and going smoothly. Then I should be ready. All the chances were that at the end of that time Sir Sagramore would still be out grailing, so no valuable time would be lost by my postponement. I should then have been in office 6 or 7 years, and I believe my system and machinery would be so well developed that I could take a holiday without its working any harm. I was pretty well satisfied with what I had already accomplished. In various quiet nooks and corners I had the beginnings of all sorts of industries underway, nuclei of future vast factories, the iron and steel missionaries of my future civilization. And in these were gathered together the brightest young minds I could find. I kept agents out raking the country for more, all the time. I was training a crowd of ignorant folk into experts in every sort of handiwork and scientific calling. These nurseries of mine went smoothly and privately along undisturbed in their obscure country retreats, where nobody was allowed to come into their precinct without a special permit, for I was afraid of the church. I had started a teacher factory, and a lot of Sunday schools the first thing. As a result, I now had an admirable system of graded schools in full blast in those places, and also a complete variety of Protestant congregations, all in prosperous and growing condition. Oh yes, that's that's certainly how you make yourself very popular with the single church that is available at this moment. Bring about a schism. Yes. You're a little bit ahead of Martin Luther, but do your thing. Everybody could be any kind of a Christian he wanted to. There was perfect freedom in that matter. But I confined public religious teaching to the churches and the Sunday schools, permitting nothing of it in my other educational buildings. I could have given my own sect the preference and made everybody a Presbyterian without any trouble, but that would have been to affront a law of human nature. Spiritual wants and instincts are as various in the human family as are physical appetites, complexions, and features, and a man is only at his best, morally, when he is equipped with the religious garment whose color and shape and size most nicely accommodate themselves to the spiritual complexion, angularities, and stature of the individual who wears it. And besides, I was afraid of a united church. It makes a mighty power, the mightiest conceivable, and then, when it by and by gets into selfish hands, as it always is bound to do, it means death to human liberty and paralysis to human thought. All mines were royal property, and there were a good many of them. They had formerly been worked as savages always worked mines, holes grubbed in the earth, and the mineral brought up in sacks of hide by hand, at the rate of a ton a day. Get out of here, bot. Where in the page were we? Holes grubbed in the earth and the mineral brought up in sacks of hide by hand, at the rate of a ton a day. But I had begun to put the mining on a scientific basis as early as I could. Yes, I had made pretty handsome progress when Sir Sagramore's challenge struck me. 4 years rolled by, and then, well, you would never imagine it in the world. Unlimited power is the ideal thing when it is in safe hands. Says every would-be dictator. All right, Pol Pot. The despotism of heaven is the one absolutely perfect government. An earthly despotism would be the absolutely perfect earthly government if the conditions were the same. Namely, the despot, the perfectest individual of the human race, and his lease of life perpetual. But as a perishable, perfect man must die, and leave his despotism in the hands of an imperfect successor. An earthly despotism is not merely a bad form of government, it is the worst form that is possible. Okay, there we go, that's a little bit better. My work showed what a despot could do with the resources of a kingdom at his command. Unsuspected by this dark land, I had the civilization of the 19th century booming under its very nose. It was fenced away from the public view, but there it was. A gigantic and unassailable fact, and to be heard from. Yet, if I lived and had luck, there it was, as sure a fact and as substantial a fact as any serene volcano, standing innocent, with its smokeless summit in the blue sky, and giving no sign of the rising hell in its bowels. My schools and churches were children 4 years before. They were grown up now. My shops of that day were vast factories now. Where I had a dozen trained men then, I had 1,000 now. Where I had one brilliant expert then, I had 50 now. I stood with my hand on the cock, so to speak, ready to turn it on and flood the midnight world with light at any moment. But I was not going to do the thing in that sudden way. It was not my policy. The people could not have stood it. And moreover, I should have had the established Roman Catholic Church on my back in a minute. No, I had been going cautiously all the while. I had had confidential agents trickling through the country some time, whose office was to undermine knighthood by imperceptible degrees, and to gnaw a little at this and that and the other superstition, and so prepare the way gradually for a better order of things. I was turning on my light one candle power at a time, and meant to continue to do so. Ah, yes, the way of subversives the world over. A little bit at a time, just chip away at the foundations. I had scattered some branch schools secretly about the kingdom, and they were doing very well. I meant to work this racket more and more as time went on, if nothing occurred to frighten me. One of my deepest secrets was my West Point, my military academy. I kept that most jealously out of sight. And I did the same with my naval academy, which I had established at a remote seaport. Both were prospering to my satisfaction. Clarence was 22 now, and was my head executive, my right hand. This is the page that was kind of dim, but was friendly at the beginning, remember? He was a darling. He was equal to anything. There wasn't anything he couldn't turn his hand to. Of late I had been training him for journalism, but for the time seemed about right for a start in the newspaper line. Nothing big, but just a small weekly for experimental circulation in my civilization nurseries. He took to it like a duck. There was an editor concealed in him. Sure. Already he had doubled himself in one way. He talked 6th century and wrote 19th. His journalistic style was climbing steadily. It was already up to the back settlement Alabama mark. And couldn't be told from the editorial output of that region either, by matter or flavor. Alright, we've got an ad kicking on in about a minute, so that's a good point to take a... We're not going to stop right away, but sit back and let that sink in. Even Mark Twain is thinking, Alabama is not quite up to snuff with everybody else. The down in the deep south, it's like, no, not at the same level as modern journalistic integrity, the intellectual sort. No. Okay, Mark Twain. Okay. I know we still say thank God for Mississippi. And it's sort of in the same vein. But that's just coming out there and saying it. In print. In the late 1800s. Okay. You go on, man. Alright, guys, we've got an ad break starting up, so let's go ahead and stand up, stretch our legs, and we'll be back in just a little bit to continue. We've got about a page left in this chapter, and we'll go from there. And yes, Twain's a proud Southerner, and he recognizes that Alabama's a little bit backward. I think they were still suffering from the, what was the ringworm, or not hookworm, at the time. Alright, ads are kicking in. If we keep chattering on, we're going to lose stuff. So, be back in just a little bit. Alright, we are back. Now, looks like YouTube isn't happy. I'm not sure why. I'm getting good upload, not really getting any buffering, but it is saying that we're not getting enough out, or enough video, but it looks okay. It's just barking about being poor. And we'll just deal with it. Nope, there it goes. It flipped back. Just complaining for no reason, which is very on brand. Thanks, YouTube. Alright, so let's dive back in and see how this will shape up. Because we have the looming threat of Sir Sagremore's challenge against our narrator, and he's in the meantime rushing to develop his civilization and his own little enclave of the 19th century comforts of home in the middle of King Arthur's court. Get back here. We had another large departure on hand, too. This was a telegraph and a telephone. Our first venture. That's what I thought. Yeah, I think hookworm was an issue for a very long time. The wires were for private service service only, as yet. It must be kept private until a riper day should come. We had a gang of men on the road, working mainly by night. They were stringing ground wires. We were afraid to put up poles, for they would attract too much inquiry. Ground wires were good enough, in both instances, for my wires were protected by an insulation of my own invention, which was perfect. How convenient. My men had orders to strike across country, avoiding roads, and establishing connection with any considerable towns whose lights betrayed their presence, and leaving experts in charge. Nobody could tell you how to find any place in the kingdom, for nobody ever went intentionally to any place, but only struck it by accident in his wanderings, and then generally left it without thinking to inquire what its name was. At one time and another we had sent out topographical expeditions to survey and map the kingdom, but the priests had always interfered and raised trouble, so we had given the thing up for the present. It would be poor wisdom to antagonize the church. As for the general condition of the country, it was as it had been when I arrived in it. To all intents and purposes, I had made changes, but they were necessarily slight, and they were not noticeable. Thus far, I had not even meddled with taxation, outside of the taxes which provided the royal revenues. I had systematized those, and put the service on an effective and righteous basis. As a result, these revenues were already quadrupled. And yet, the burden was so much more equally distributed than before, that all the kingdom felt a sense of relief, and the praises of my administration were hearty and general. Personally, I struck an interruption now, but I did not mind it. It could not have happened at a better time. Earlier, it could have annoyed me, but now everything was in good hands and swimming right along. The king had reminded me several times of late that the postponement I had asked for, 4 years before, had about run out now. It was a hint that I ought to be starting out to seek adventures and get up a reputation of a size to make me worthy of the honor of breaking a lance with Sir Sagremor, who was still out grailing, but was being hunted for by various relief expeditions and might be found any year now. So, you see, I was expecting this interruption. It did not take me by surprise. Yeah, there we have it. King Arthur is like, yeah, you know what? If you're going to try to fit in with the boys, you probably should try and act like one of the boys. Go off, have adventures. Get out of my hair. All right, Chapter 11. The Yankee in Search of Adventures. I wonder if this is going to feel like Don Quixote. having out-of-place adventures. Probably a little bit more successful. There never was such a country for wandering liars, and they were of both sexes. Hardly a month went by without one of these tramps arriving, and generally loaded with a tale about some princess or other wanting help to get her out of some faraway castle, where she was held in captivity by a lawless scoundrel, usually a giant. Now, you would think that the first thing the king would do after listening to such a novelette from an entire stranger would be to ask for credentials. Yes, and a pointer or two as to locality of castle, best route to it, and so on. But nobody ever thought of so simple and common sense a thing at that. No, everybody swallowed these people's lies whole, and never asked a question of any sort or about anything. Well, one day when I was not around, one of these people came along. It was a she one this time, and told a tale of the usual pattern. Her mistress was a captive in a vast and gloomy castle, along with 44 other young and beautiful girls, pretty much all of them princesses. They had been languishing in that cruel captivity for 26 years. The masters of the castle were 3 stupendous brothers, each with 4 arms and 1 eye, the eye in the center of the forehead, and as big as a fruit. A sort of fruit not mentioned, their usual slovenliness in statistics. Okay. Would you believe it? The king and the whole round table were in raptures over this preposterous opportunity for adventure. Every knight of the table jumped for the chance and begged for it, but to their vexation and chagrin, the king conferred it upon me, who had not asked for it at all. By an effort, I contained my joy when Clarence brought me the news, but he could not contain his. His mouth gushed delight and gratitude in a steady discharge, delight in my good fortune, gratitude to the king for this splendid mark of his favor for me. He could keep neither his legs nor his body still, but pirouetted about the place in an airy ecstasy of happiness. On my side, I could have cursed the kindness that conferred upon me this benefaction, but I kept my vexation under the surface for policy's sake, and did what I could to let on to be glad. Indeed, I said I was glad, and in a way it was true. I was as glad as a person is when he is scalped. Well, one must make the best of things, and not waste time with useless fretting. But get down to business, and see what can be done. In all lies there is wheat among the chaff. I must get at the wheat in this case, so I sent for the girl, and she came. She was a comely enough creature, and soft and modest. But if signs went for anything, she didn't know as much as a lady's watch. I said, "My dear, have you been questioned as to particulars?" She said she hadn't. "Well, I didn't expect you had, but I thought I would ask, to make sure. It's the way I've been raised. Now, you mustn't take it unkindly if I remind you that, as we don't know you, we must go a little slow. You may be all right, of course, and we'll hope that you are, but to take it for granted isn't business. You understand that. I'm obliged to ask you a few questions. Just answer up fair and square, and don't be afraid. Where do you live when you are at home?" "In the land of Moder, fair sir." "Land of Moder. I don't particularly remember hearing of it before. Parents living?" "As to that, I don't know if they be yet alive, sith it is many years that I have lain shut up in the castle." "Your name, please?" "I hate the Demoiselle Alexandre de Catelor, and it please you." "Do you know anybody here who can identify you?" "That were not likely, fair lord, I being come hither now for the first time." "Have you brought any letters, any documents, any proofs that you are trustworthy and truthful?" "Of a surety, no, and wherefore should I? Have I not a tongue? And cannot I say all that myself? But you're saying it, you know, and somebody else's saying it is different. Different? How might that be? I fear me I do not understand. Don't understand. Land of... What? You see... What? Great Scott! Can't you understand a little thing like that? Can't you understand the difference between your... Why do you look so innocent and idiotic? I? In truth, I know not, but an it were the will of God. I can see his brain just twisting and getting ready to explode in frustration. If you've ever had to deal with a particularly dim-witted child, it's basically like this. Yes, I reckon that's about the size of it. Don't mind my seeming excited, I'm not. Let us change the subject. Now, as to this castle, with 45 princesses in it, and 3 ogres at the head of it, tell me, where is this harem? Harem? The castle. You understand? Where is the castle? Oh, as to that, it is great and strong and well beseen, and lieth in a far country. Yes, it is many leagues. How many? Ah, fair sir, it were woundily hard to tell. There are so many, and do so lap the one upon the other, and being made all in the same image and tincted with the same colour, one may not know the one league from its fellow, nor how to count them, except that they be taken apart. And ye wit well it were God's work to do that, being not within man's capacity, for ye will note... Hold on. Never mind about the distance. Whereabouts does the castle lie? What's the direct... Hang on. That's a hard down. Very hard down. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're back. I hope we're back anyway. Wait, what? No! Twitch, what are you doing? Just because we disconnected for a moment does not make it a brand new stream. What are you doing? Yeah, we had a bit of a blip in the connection. We dropped all the way down to 0. OBS disconnected and it came back up. We're still dropping frames, so that's fun. Tell you what. It says we've got an ad coming up. We'll let it do its thing. And hopefully, by the time that it comes back, we'll be more or less stabilized. So hang tight. I'm going to see what the hell my internet is doing. Well, okay, maybe it will run an ad. Maybe it will not. I don't know. Okay, yeah, there's an ad starting in a minute. Okay, that'll do. Anyway. I know where we left off. And we're going to see if the connection is going to stay stable. We haven't dropped frames for a little bit, so I think we're okay. It just decided that, you know, rather than reconnect, it just end stream and then come back. Nothing to worry about. Nothing there. We'll see. All right, let's take a few minutes. It's a little bit soon for our last break, but Twitch decided that we're having ads. Who am I to argue? All right, be back in a bit. Thanks, guys. Alright, I'm not sure how well this is going to carry on. We've got some pretty fantastically terrible internet here right now. Yeah, wow. It's to the point where Comcast says that I'm offline, which I call bollocks on that. I have very bad internet. It's always fun when you can't really identify or describe the problem properly because, yes, it's slow. I've got incredible latency. I've got 3,000 ping. But when the latency's gone, I've got great connection. Speeds are great. The upload is piss poor. Yeah. And there goes the frames. This one might be a doozy. I'm hoping it... Yesterday we had a nasty storm roll through. Actually knocked out. Is very unusual. I haven't noticed any problems with my connection today, but just now it's firing up. So, Lord knows. I've always had some spotty internet around here. Old building with bad connections, and it's Comcast, so there's only so much you can ask for. I think we might be toast tonight, boys. This one is not looking too hot. How far we were from the start of the chapter? 3 pages off. Alright, yeah, I think that might be what we do. I'm thinking, for now I'm going to put a... yeah, I had dial-up as well. It was a little bit more reliable than this. Yeah, I'm like 30 minutes behind on my monitor on YouTube. That's fantastic. Twitch is having a time of it. Alright. Well, we're not dropping frames. So, let's see. I'm still seeing some absolutely absurd ping. I should not be getting 1,000 ping to quad 8s. Like, for fuck's sake. Alright, now it's dropping down low. Still above 100, but... Okay, we might be stabilizing. We might be through the worst of it. Maybe. Maybe. Alright, let's give it a try. It still says we're unstable, which, honestly, real. Nope, there go more. There go the frames. OBS is dropping out on us. Alright, I think we're gonna give this one up for no good tonight. Let me see if it will even let me look and find other people that are streaming. It might not even load that. Yeah, not really even loading that. Fantastic. Okay, starting to get a little bit loading in. Little tiny bit. Yeah, I don't know, like, I've got basically no internet anywhere right now. I can't pull up a speed test. I've got ping in the going anywhere from 2000 to 200 to just Google. Figure I'll restart everything on my stream or on my network stack after we finish up here and go from there, but I'm reasonably sure it's not my internal. Yeah, I'm keeping my RDP connection to my home server up just fine. So it's certainly, the problem is outside of my network, which I should certainly fucking hope so. It just doesn't really solve our problem, does it? And yeah, it just keeps going up and down. Can't catch more than 30 seconds of stable connection. Alright. I'm thinking, let's see, one more try to see if the raid interface will even load up for me. Here we go, same category. Tuesdays we usually have some issues with finding people. Well, there's snooze button reading, some mystery. Some writers. Mostly writers. Yeah, unfortunately, even going through, say, like a VPN or something, or hell, even a Tor would not probably solve it, because I usually, I think it's an interface problem slightly upstream. I've had some issues before where there's been like some corrosion on the external connection to the uplink to the unit or to the building, and it requires having someone come out and mess with it. But I shouldn't have to do that every year. So there's other things at play here. But of course, they'll never actually admit it. Alright, we're a little bit more... Well, no, I said we were a little bit more stable, and then immediately we started dropping frames. Alright. I am throwing in the towel. We are not having a good night of it tonight, and that is the way of it. Sometimes the internet just says no. So, I do see we've got a friend that is reading, Snooze Button TV, is reading The Secret of the Old Clock and the Wyvern Mystery. We've rated her before, and it's been pretty good fun. So let's go ahead and head back out that way. If we can stick around, great. If not, we'll do what we can. So, alright. Thanks for struggling along with us. We'll be back next time on Friday to continue from Chapter 11. Hopefully, with a little bit more stability, we can hope. I'll do some troubleshooting in the meantime, and we'll do what we can. Until next time, thank you for joining us. And be sure to give Snooze Button TV our very best as we raid over now.
Arthur Irving-Rush. Readers, welcome on in. Arthur Irving-Rush, we have met as another reading streamer. What were you reading tonight, Arthur? Tell us all about it. Welcome on in, readers. Before my news series, I'm a variety streamer from Canada, so we do gaming and reading content. But every Tuesday is our book club, and we always warm up with a children's story before we get on into our more like adult list. And so we are warming up. We're reading the very first Andy Drew book, The Secret of the Old Clock. Before we read Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu's Penny Dreadful, The Wyvern Mystery. Tried to make some progress with my Yankee and King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain until the internet shut me down. Oh, isn't that the way it goes? Oh my goodness, Scotty. 30 streams